it's going to change it, and there we go. So that is our... Hi, I'm JP here for Warrior Sound, and in these videos we're going to learn all about Garageband for iOS. Garageband iOS is a powerful mobile recording device, or referred to as a digital audio workstation or DAW, on iPad, iPhone and iPod Touch. Garageband came to iOS in 2011 and has some unique elements different from the Mac because of the touchscreen. I'm going to show you how you can get audio and sound into the app to record and build up a song, a podcast, a soundscape, soundtrack for a film, or even prep it for a live performance. Garageband helps you create great music directly on your iPad or your iPhone or your iPod Touch. You can play and record realistic touch instruments, or plug in your amp or your own instruments or your microphones. You can choose from thousands of built-in loops and sound effects, and even record your own loops and add them into the mix. In this video, we're going to go through and understand Garageband's interface, where things are and how you interact with it. Now, firstly, I'm going to be using an iPad for this, and Garageband now comes free if you buy a new iOS device. But if you don't have it, or if you deleted it, you can get it from the App Store. Be aware, it is now over 1.5 GB of space, so it is quite big. And what I would suggest, obviously, you've got enough space for the app itself and also some recordings. Let's dive in. So when you download Garageband for the first time, you're shown a welcome screen, and then when you launch it after that, it's going to show you this. This is the song browser. So it's basically the Garageband folder inside the Files app in iOS 11 and 12. This is where your projects are stored. Now from here, we can tap Create Document, which will bring up a new project, or we can go onto an existing one for further editing. There's some other options here that we're going to go into a little bit later, but for now, I'm going to choose Create Document. Once you've chosen Create Document, it's going to show you two different paths that you can actually get audio into Garageband. And this is the first one. This is tracks. So at the top here, you've got tracks, and then the other side of that is live loops. I'm going to go into both of these right now. Tracks is a great way, and it's probably the more traditional way that people would know about getting audio into a digital audio workstation. So what it does is it shows you a couple of instruments or a couple of paths or ways of getting audio in. So if we start with a keyboard, and then under that, we've got a couple of options. We'll go into them a little bit in depth later on. We've also got drums, and then you can create your own beats with acoustic drums, with electronic drums, with a beat sequencer. You've got amp, so you can plug in your guitar or bass and play through amps and stomp boxes. Obviously, you could do that with a audio interface. You've got the audio recorder. Now this one can either use the microphone of the device you're using, or again, an audio interface, and plug in a microphone for voice or for an instrument. You've got then strings, bass, guitar, and world, and these are your multi-touch instruments. After that, you've got the drummer. Now the drummer is different to drums. Drums is where you're creating the beat yourself and actually figuring out where everything goes for that. The drummer is a virtual session drummer. So you pick the drummer, the style they play, and what kit they're playing, and then it does it for you. Two extra things on tracks. You've got external. So if you've got another app that's got a great sounding keyboard and you want to bring that in, now you can. So you've also got audio unit extensions and inter-app audio. If you're familiar with Audio Buzz, you'll be familiar with this. The last one is the sound library. So the sound library is by Apple, and they are releasing free instruments, sounds and loops, and they just keep adding them. You can download them, and they're completely free, and they just download straight inside Garageband. The other way is live loops. So live loops at the top there, if you tap that, it's going to show you a different user interface. And this shows you a lot of boxes. Now, loops are different to tracks. Tracks, I would say, is where you have a linear recording for each instrument. So you're manipulating one instrument at a time. Live loops is already playing with pre-recorded loops or samples, or adding your own samples, and then performing that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, we've got a couple of different boxes. So Apple have created presets, or almost like demos. So we've got them in different ones here, like rock and EDM and house and chill. And we're going to go into those, and I'm going to show you the user interface for that a little bit later. So I'm going to show you the user interface for tracks, and I'm going to use the keyboard as an example. Okay, so let's go into tracks. I'm going to pick keyboard. I'm just going to tap the middle of the screen. And then what it's going to do is it's going to load the keyboard up as you last used it. So I'm just going to put it back to the default. So I'm going to show you the user interface. There's 3 main elements here. So the top one you've got is the control bar. That's where it says My Songs and the strip across there. Then you've got the ruler, which is part of the controlling. Underneath that, you've got the control area. And then underneath that, you've got the play area. So on the top bar here, we've got My Songs. If I hit that, that's going to take me back to files. It's going to take me out of the song completely. It will automatically save if you hit that, so don't panic if you hit it by mistake. The next one is this song browser, which we've just been in, where it said drums and guitar and everything else. That's that little square button there. Next door to that is the edit view. Now that's what you would traditionally see in Garageband or Logic when you launch it on a Mac, where it shows you basically the different strips. And that's what you're going to see at the end when we've recorded something. Next door to that is some settings. Now they are instrument settings, so there's settings of the instrument you're playing with right now. So if I tap on that, I'll just show you that. So it says there grand piano, and it's got track settings, the output, and this is just for the grand piano. Obviously, if you've got any plugins, we've got a couple of little plugins there, and some master effects as well. We'll go into that a little bit later. In the middle, you've got the transport bar. It's real simple. You've got 3 buttons, and you've got the record, you've got the play, and you've got the go back or the pause or the stop. And they change depending on what you're doing with them. Next door to that is your master volume, and that's the volume of the whole project. Then you've got the metronome. If it's blue, it's on. If it is white, it's off. And then next door to that, you've got the spanner icon and a little question mark. And that question mark is a help button. It's really useful, actually. If you are stuck, then just press that. It will show you where things are if you're not familiar with it. Underneath that is the ruler, and you've got 8 bars of time where we're going to record. Now, by standard, GarageBand iOS starts with 8 bars, and then when you record to the 8th bar, it goes back to the first bar again. There's a little plus underneath the question mark or next door to 8th bar, and if you tap on that, you can actually have a different section, or you can have so you can have a section for a verse, a section for a chorus, or you can turn on what's called automatic. And automatic, once it gets to the 8th bar, will go to the 9th, 10th, and carry on going until you hit stop. Or manual, as I say, you can actually go 8 bars, 16 bars, 15 bars, whatever you need. So underneath that is where it says grand piano. This is what's called the control area. Now, on a grand piano, there's no other controls really other than sustain, which is underneath that. But if I was to tap in the control area, this is where I change the sound. So where it's you've got the icon of the grand piano. If I tap on that, I can tap the electric piano and give that a second, and then what it's going to do is going to change it. So any controls that you have for that instrument will appear in this area. So as you can see there, I've got tremolo, chorus, I've got a pitch wheel. You wouldn't get that on a grand piano. If I go to the smooth clav, you've got a couple of different controls there as well. If I go to something like an organ, let's go to the soul organ, for example, it changes even more. So we've got things like drawbars, and we've got a little bit of distortion there, chorus on or off. So it's really, really cleverly worked out that that area is specific to that instrument. I'm going to go back to the grand piano for now. Underneath that, we've got a couple of controls which are all to do with playing, and then we've got the play area, which is where the keyboard is. So we've got octave up and down, and we've got sustain. Now you can hold the sustain down and just tap on the note, and it'll keep doing it. Or what you can do is you can lock it. So you can swipe it and it's permanently on, and it keeps its hand free. Or you can unswipe it to obviously unlock it. At the moment, there's a button in the middle which says glissando. So if I use my finger and draw my finger up and down the screen, you'll just hear it go past every note. You can tap on that and go to scroll. Now, if I then tap on C3 and then move my finger up, it's going to move the keyboard up, which is really useful. So if you want to go up and down the keyboard really quickly, you can do that. Or if you leave it on glissando, it's like you're drawing your finger up and down the keyboard. Next door to that, we've got scale. And this is where it gets really interesting, because if you are a guitarist and you want to record some stuff in, but you want to also put some keyboards down, but you don't know how to play keyboards, but you know you just want a certain scale, these buttons here basically change the way the play area is. So obviously you've got black and white keys for a piano. If I go to scale, I go, right, well, I know I want it in major. It's in C because I've put it in C in the settings. If I go to major, what it does, it takes those keys away and just replaces them with the keys I need from C3 to C4. So if I go to C3, quite useful. You've got a couple of other ones there. You've got quite a few actually. So you've got things like minor, you've got blues, you've got mixolydian. So I'd encourage you to go through them and just see how they change the way the play area changes. Next door to that, we've got a little keyboard, and if you tap on that, it shows you how the keyboard is laid out. You can turn things on like velocity and it will show the controls and show how you're tapping it. You can tap harder or softer and it will change the way it's played. You can widen the keys if you've got big fingers like me, and you can also have a second keyboard as well, so you can have two keyboards, one on top, one on the other, and they are different because we've got C2, C3, C4, and then there's C4 again, C5, C6. So it's quite useful for that as well. I am going to keep it to one keyboard just for the moment. Next door to that, we've got an arpeggiator. So we can run that, and then it'll ask us how you want it to be run, and it'll go red. So literally by holding a couple of notes down, just keeping that held down, and it's doing that for me. It's very useful. And then we can just turn run off, and it'll put the arpeggiator back to white, which means it's off. The last one is a way of actually playing in a completely different way. So this is actually a chord structured way. So if you know what chord you want, again, like I said, if you don't know how to play piano, but you know you need a C, a G, and an A minor, then you can actually play it with this one. So this last little button here, what we can do is if you tap on that, it changes the play area completely. So the play area all moves up, and we've got a load of chords. You can change these chords in the settings, by the way. And what this does is it shows you a grey area, a white area with the note on top. So if I was to tap on that note, it gives me different versions of C going up and down. And then the grey area is your left hand, which would be the bass. So I can literally, with two fingers, play a bass and a top. Again, you've still got the sustain there. You've still got an arpeggiator as well. And then above that, you'll notice it says grand piano, and next to that, it says autoplay. Somewhere on the multi-touch instruments, there's an autoplay always when you're in this mode. So what autoplay does, instead of you tapping it, you have to tap it continuously to get the notes coming out of it. You can turn autoplay on. There's always 4 versions of autoplay. And if we do that, you'll notice that sort of scale goes away, and we've just got right hand, left hand, and the note. So if I just press C at the very top, it's going to pick that whole strip, and it's going to continuously play for me. I can change it whilst it's doing it as well. And it'll change the style. So the autoplay is 4 different styles. Tap it again and it stops. What I want you guys to realize as well is, and certainly please do discover it, is when you go through the different sounds, so you've got grand piano, if I go and do the organ, it won't be the exact same playing. It'll be a different playing that's suited to the organ. Really, really clever. They've done it for pretty much every instrument that's there. And that is how we play it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use autoplay just for this demonstration. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to record 8 bars in, and I'm just going to show you how that looks. So when I hit record, it's going to give me a 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to keep the metronome going. And then what we'll do is we record our piece. Notice there at the very top, I'll just stop that for a moment. You'll notice at the very top, the ruler has now gone green, which means that there is something in there. So what we didn't want to do is we want to see that. So we're going to go into now what would be the traditional look of a door. So the second button along, which looks like sort of 3 lines, sort of horizontal with a couple of gaps, that is the tracks view. If we tap that, it's going to change it, and there we go. So that is our 8 bars recorded in. We have a visual representation of it, which actually, if you tap into it and go into edit, it's MIDI, and we can actually edit that later on if you want to. And then you'll notice that the tracks button at the very top changes to a little keyboard with a little gear around it, meaning keyboard settings. So if you tap that again, you can go back to where we were. So we can alternate between the two. Nice little tip for you. If you want to do that, you don't want to tap that, you can double tap the icon on the left hand side. So there's a piano icon there, double tap that, it'll do exactly the same thing. So the other thing as well is now we're in this mode, you'll notice that we've got the loops option back in the top right hand corner in the control bar. And then also we've got the effects there, and also on the bottom left hand side of the whole screen we've got a plus. So this is how we're going to add another element. So if we go to plus, it just takes us straight back to the the instrument browser. So then what I can do is I could pick, for example, I'm going to go the other way and I'm going to pick a drummer. So if I pick an acoustic drummer, this will automatically add an 8-bar drum kit in for me, and then I can pick the drummer that I want. So we want pop rock, that's fine, I'll just keep with Kyle. We'll make it a little bit louder. We want some tambourines in there and a little bit more fills. And you'll notice as I'm doing all that, this yellow 8-bar is already been filled in. So that's basically it. All I need to do now is hit play, and it's going to play the piano plus this drummer. Even while it's playing, go back to track view. Okay, so that's just a real quick look at tracks view. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to go back a step. I'm going to show you live loops. Okay, so we've gone back a step now, and we've gone into, as if we're creating a new project again, and we've gone into live loops. Live loops, as I said before, is a great way if you're not a musician, but you do want to create some music, or if you know the kind of sound you want, real great way of creating some audio. If you were going to add it to a movie, or if you just want to do a bit of performance, you can still add stuff in and still play stuff in as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go do a completely brand new one. The way this works is tracks obviously is linear, where you've got one track underneath another, as you saw. This kind of works in the same way, but we've got boxes. So instead of recording that way, we're recording that way. So in the top right hand corner, you can see there we've got loops, which is next door to the spanner icon. If I tap on that, it brings up an entire library of loops. Now at the moment it's way over 1,000 loops, and Apple keep releasing more as well. You can also bring your own files in as well. So if you've recorded something and you want it to be looped round, there's a files option at the top of this menu, you can bring it in. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you these. So as we go through, you'll see green ones and blue ones. The blue ones are audio, the green ones are MIDI. And you'll see how many bars that track is, or that loop is. So I'm going to use the float beat, and I'm just going to tap on that. Now that's playing at the BPM of the project. If you want to change the BPM, you can change it in the settings. Now I quite like that, that's cool. So it's done that for me. I've just got 8 bars there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my finger down on that. It'll bounce under my finger, and then the menu automatically goes away. And you can see there, while I've got it there, it's put a yellow box around saying, where do you want this loop to be? So I'm going to put it at the beginning. The icon changes on the left-hand side, and then the menu automatically comes back up saying, right, what's next? What loop do you need? So we're going to have a look at this one, which is only 2 bars long. Cool. Happy with that. So I'm going to hold that one down. I'm going to put it underneath. Any loops that are underneath each other will play together. If they are beside each other, then that's one section and that's a different section. So now what I can do is I can just get rid of the menu. I can tap on the loop individually, or there's a button at the bottom which is a triangle, and that is a whole scene selector. So I'm going to start individually, stop them, and then show you what happens when you hit the scene selector. You'll notice it's obviously showing you a visual representation of it going around. Okay, so just to show you that, obviously at the moment I've hit, it's almost like pause, because you'll see that the loops are flashing. If I then hit the back button, it'll stop the loops completely and put them back to 12 o'clock. If I hit the triangle, it's just going to play all the loops together at the same time. again, it's like a pause, and then I hit it back, and then it puts it back again. This is really, really useful because what you can do is you can create a beat, create a couple of backings straight away, and you'll notice, just like in tracks mode, on the left-hand side, underneath the last thing you've put in, there's a plus button. If we tap that, we can bring in another loop, or we can bring in an instrument. So you could bring up a load of stuff, you could bring up a vocal, you can then record that vocal in. It's a really, really clever way. Now, the one thing that people ask, as soon as you put a loop in, you go, right, I don't like that loop. How do I get rid of it? Or how do I move it to a different part? So the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see these little boxes with a pencil marker, and that's called edit. When I tap that, all the loops go dark blue. And then what that means is you can then move them to wherever you want. Or if you tap on them and then tap on it again, it gives you a couple of extra things like delete, copy, paste. You can even do it with the little triangles. And if I tap on that, we could duplicate this. So we could have a load of them going through and just keep adding stuff. We could rename it, or we can delete it. The other option you can do as well is in the normal mode, which is the normal play mode, you can tap on the icon and then tap the icon again and hit delete, but that will delete the whole strip for that instrument. I hope that gives you a little bit of an insight into loops. What the last part of loops is the effects. Now you can have effects on both tracks and loops. It's just a nice little feature. It works better with loops, I think. But when you've got something playing, there's an FX button at the top there. If you tap that, it brings up this little bar. And then while you're playing, you can mess around with a couple of different effects that Apple have made. And I'll give you an example of that now. Cool. So you can play loops almost like a performance. You'll notice that when I did all of that, I haven't hit the record button. So when you do hit the record button, then it records the way you've triggered it or the way you've looped it. It'll even record the effects and everything as that on a separate strip as well. And then that puts it into tracks mode. So then you can edit it as a solid song. So then if you want to change the front or change the back, or you could keep it like this and just perform it live. So I hope that gives you an insight into the user interface of Garageband, and we're going to do a couple of more videos and go a little bit deeper into the different subjects. Thanks for watching.